Did the SEC look out for Texas and Oklahoma? Yeah, when you have a party, when you have a get together and you have new people that join your circle of friends, you make sure they're comfortable, you bring them into the fold and introduce them to everyone. Did the SEC look out for Texas and Oklahoma? Oklahoma home has Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, and the neutral site game at Texas. Oklahoma away, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri. Texas home, Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi State. Road, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and then Oklahoma in Dallas. Did the SEC look out for Texas and Oklahoma, or should they have?
Certainly didn't look out for Oklahoma, but they looked they certainly did look out for Texas. I think they'd look out for Texas. I think there's a few things that go into this. Again, part of it is coaching. Brent Venables is, even if he gets the program going, is not going to have it's not going to be a fun program as a defensive minded coach. Whereas I think a lot of the college football world and the SEC world and a lot of people we know, Dave, really want Steve Sarkisian to do well. There's just a lot of joy in that. Plus there's the Arch Manning factor. They want Arch Manning to be successful. And so I think I could have seen them looking out for Texas. But it's clear they didn't look out for Oklahoma. I mean, heck, Texas is one of Oklahoma's home games this year, and it's in Dallas.
Yes. Why do you think that people want Steve Sarkisian to do well? It's because he had a little bump in the road back at Southern California?
Yeah, I think the bump in the road, and it seems like he's very well respected in the college football coaching circles. I think a lot of people in the coaching circles have a lot of respect for him, and because of that, he's almost like the anti-Lane Kiffin to a lot of people.
That is the offensive mind, but maybe more likable. I think there's a lot of coaches that there are at least a dozen, if not 2 dozen, that hope that he fails miserably.
Really?
Because I think they want his gig.
Well, I think yes, that's Urban Meyer.
Right. But I think it's more than Urban Meyer. I think there might be a Lane Kiffin out there that would be very interested. I think there are some other guys that would be interested. Hey, it's Texas. And I'm not saying Josh Heupel would be interested, but if Texas came to him and said, you've mastered the NIL and you have more NIL money at Texas, again, I think Josh Heupel is very committed to Tennessee. I think almost every coach would listen. Nick Saban, during his great run at Alabama, listened, and they offered him $100 million for 10 years, way before Jimbo Fisher got that deal. So I think there are a lot of coaches that would like to see Steve Sarkisian stumble. I think there are probably a half dozen coaches that hope he's the Jeremy Pruitt. What do I mean by that? Jeremy Pruitt brought in a lot of good talent to Tennessee. He may have had to pay to do that, but he did it, and Tennessee is now benefiting off of that, Caleb. So I think there are a lot of coaches that hope he's that guy. That hope he's and I got to be honest with you. If you made me bet, I would say he probably is that guy. I don't know that Steve Sarkisian is going to hoist a national championship trophy. Do you see that out of him?
No, I think he's massively overrated as a head coach, quite honestly. I just think better than Brent Venables, but I don't think he's going to win at Texas. And I also think Texas is an overrated job. I mean, it's not – you're competing with 5-6 other Power 5 schools in your home state, plus Oklahoma and Oklahoma State come in to get guys. Texas kids aren't as committed to staying in Texas as other states. And Texas football recruits they're overrated.
They do tend to be overrated, and they don't. And really, the ones that Texas wants, or Texas A&M, they tend to do a really good job. The guys that go elsewhere, Tennessee has a long history. I could spend an hour talking about prospects out of Texas that didn't do well at Tennessee for whatever reason, a multitude of reasons, from drugs to competition to whatever. But as far as Oklahoma, I look at Brent Venables, and when I look at Brent Venables and Steve Sarkisian, I don't know that the SEC got tougher in the short term. It got better. It got more notoriety by adding 2 very storied programs. But is it really any tougher than it was before Texas and Oklahoma were announced? As of 2024, 2025, 2026, the 3 years that they'll be in the conference. Is it that much tougher? Really?
Not when you're still playing 8 conference games. No. I mean, and also factoring in here, let's ask the real question. The SEC's been doing 8 conference games since 1992 when the conference is split to 12 teams. Is the SEC any tougher than the last time it was at 12 teams? Not just 14, but is it any tougher than it was before it added Missouri and Texas A&M? I would argue it might be a little worse right now than it was back in 2011.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, you love the notoriety if you're the SEC. You love the fact that you brought in 2 programs that combined have more panache than UCLA and Southern California, which the Big Ten brought up. But at the end of the day, I would, if you brought in Southern Cal and UCLA, to me, that is a greater challenge short term than Texas and Oklahoma because of Lincoln Riley. Now, that may not be the
And
case.
Chip Kelly.
And Chip Kelly. That may not be the case 5-10 years from now. But right now, I think they're a tougher matchup, those 2 programs, than Texas and Oklahoma.
I do too. The only caveat I would say with this, and this is going to be tested, Big Ten fans have said for years, and we've never really tested it, but they have said for years, and I'm sure you've heard it when we talk about the SEC speed. They say it's a totally different game in the upper Midwest. You guys don't understand. Speed doesn't translate to the cold, so the Big Ten schools can't play the same speed type of game. We're going to find that out very quickly with USC playing at Michigan or playing at Ohio State or playing at these Midwestern schools. If what the Big Ten has said for so long is true, that speed slows down in the cold.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with that. It's time for today's tough question. We're going to go a little bit off script, but I want to throw this at you and get your thoughts. Today's tough question is right now, and it's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, your thoughts on the message board. When we are sitting down having this discussion 10 years from now, who will be the bigger rival? Will it be Oklahoma or will it be Texas? I ask you. I'm not going to say they're rivals because they already have. Tennessee has more rivals than any school I know. They've got Alabama, Vanderbilt, Georgia. Kentucky thinks they're a rival. I mean, they have a ton of, quote, rivals. But when I look at this edition, I think Oklahoma, because of the Heupel tie, might, and the fact that they played a couple times and you've done the checkerboard stuff kind of like Oklahoma, I think that Oklahoma actually will be the bigger rival over the UT schools, which I know is a big deal to a lot of people. I think the Oklahoma thing has a lot of excitement to it, maybe more so than Texas right now. Am I off base on that?
Yeah, it has more excitement now. So over the next 10 years, assuming Oklahoma gets its act together, which they may or may not do, Oklahoma is going to be the bigger rival. But over the course of 50 years, I mean, great rivalries are like 50, 60, 70 years old. I don't know if Oklahoma can outdo Texas. Think about it this way. I came up in the 90s. I barely remembered Alabama being the rival. I remember Florida. I remember Florida being Tennessee's biggest rival. And I mean, I remember being a kid thinking like, this is how it's going to be forever. Tennessee, Florida is it. And now Tennessee, Florida, I mean, we're not going to be that shocked when Florida comes off the schedule on a regular basis in 2 years. And so because what we realized is that rivalry was nothing but a result of the situations in college football in the 90s with a former Tennessee guy coaching Florida, dominating, taking shots at Tennessee, and Peyton Manning at Tennessee. So those factors made it a rivalry, but it's not a rivalry. That what we're talking about with Oklahoma is it's dependent on one thing: Josh Heupel staying at Tennessee or not going to Oklahoma.
Well, and the other thing with these rivalries or series that is exciting, and I don't know that they'll become rivals, but you have a guy named Arch Manning at Texas. And don't think that if he's the starter in 2024, that's going to be brought up each and every time that Tennessee and Texas play into the future. So that is exciting to me. I assume at some point they would play and that he would be the starter. And you have the Heupel thing at Oklahoma. You have some great storylines. I don't know if they'll become rivals, but short term, you got great storylines.
Yeah, amazing storyline short term, and that's another one. That's something that you're right might actually make UT or Texas the bigger rivalry short term than even Oklahoma is, because Arch Manning. Tennessee got lucky in the early 2000s. They never had to play Eli Manning when Eli was at Ole Miss, and had they had to, they would have had to see Peyton Manning show up in rooting for Ole Miss, which would have been a really big gut punch to them. The way it was to Ole Miss fans when Archie and Olivia had to show up in Memphis in 1996 and root for Tennessee against Ole Miss when Peyton Manning was at Tennessee.
That's pretty good. And do we know what's happening after 2024? We really have no idea. Tennessee could be at Texas, or Tennessee could be hosting Texas, right, in 2025.
Yeah, we have no idea. We don't even know what type of. We don't know if the SEC is going to. We don't know if this is going to be where the SEC stays at. Look, there's still a lot of talk. I don't know if you guys know about. There's a lot. If you listen to Florida State Twitter, and if you listen to Florida State media, they're convinced they're going to be in the SEC in 2 years. They are thoroughly convinced that it's happening.
Interesting. So do either of these become rivals? So do either of these surpass Florida, Alabama, for the older people out there, 70 plus, Vanderbilt as rivals? I mean, if they're not, Tennessee doesn't play Florida every year, which is a possibility.
Oh yeah, that rivalry's over. Tennessee's not going to play Florida every year. That's done.
It's so unfortunate.
Yeah.
So do they supplant Florida? Do either of these supplant Florida as a rival? Do they even supplant Kentucky as a pseudo rival? Where do they fall in the pecking order?
One of them could become on a tier with Florida as a pseudo rival, we would say. Tennessee's 2 yearly rivals that are going to be most important to keep are Vanderbilt and Alabama. That's the ones that the SEC has to keep two. They're keeping those two. If they pick a third, it's either going to be Kentucky or South Carolina. It'll be one of those two. So Alabama is the one that, look, they played over 100 times. They first met in 1901. The two most prestigious programs in the SEC. That's going to be the one that they have to keep. That's probably the third or fourth most protected rivalry in the SEC. There's Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, and Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Texas and Oklahoma.
I'm just saying that however you figure out this schedule, if you have permanent opponents or however that works out, if you kept Tennessee and Texas together for long enough, talking 8 to 10 years, you would make that a rivalry.
Oh, absolutely, you would.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question.
By the way, the biggest rivalry in the SEC, we all know, is Vanderbilt, Kentucky, right?
It's huge. There's no stopping Vanderbilt, Kentucky. Jacob Warren, by the way, what do people need to do? Because it's a busy day and sometimes I forget to say it.
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
Okay, so I'll ask you this. Who's most likely to be a rival? And it's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. There's no rivaling. Huh? See what I did there? Andy Mason. Yeah, that's pretty good. When it comes to real estate in East Tennessee, best prices, best service, go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com. You'll absolutely love Andy and what he can do for your family, save you thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on your real estate needs. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. So out of the two, short-term, long-term, who's most likely to become a rival, Texas or Oklahoma to Tennessee?
Well, there's two short terms. There's 10-year short term and short, like 3-year short term.
I'm going 5 and 25. Those are my parameters for you.
Okay, 5 years, I'll go Texas because Arch Manning will be gone in 5 years. So I'll go Texas.
So I'm talking about within the next 5 years.
Oh, sorry, next 5. I'm sorry. 5 years, I'll go Oklahoma because Arch Manning will be gone within the next 5 years. The Heupel Oklahoma storyline will not be gone within the next 5 years, particularly if Oklahoma comes calling one day to Heupel.
Okay, I agree with that. So I'm going to go Oklahoma short term. In 25 years, will Texas, Tennessee be a rivalry?
No, because they won't play each other every year. Neither of these is going to be rivalries. It's just Texas will be a bigger rivalry than Oklahoma, but Tennessee's not playing Texas every year unless college football changes and decides to do 15 regular season games a year, which, I mean, I'm fine with that. Let's do it.
I mean, if you're going to push one, give me one rivalry right now. I guess A&M Texas, now that they're together again. So A&M Texas or A&M Oklahoma, that puts back to the old Southwest Conference days. So other than that, what other rivalry, if you're the SEC, would you like to see grow out of this new schedule, this new conference realignment? To me,
they're going to try to get Texas. They're going to try to get A&M and LSU to grow. They've been trying to make that happen for a long time, and they're still working on that. So it's they're trying to make that happen the way Gretchen tried to make Fetch happen in Mean Girls. Okay, so
love that movie. Do not remember any of their names.